Today, guys, we are going to discuss Ozempic, but not in the way most people expect. We are not only talking about weight loss or medicine. We are going to follow Ozempic beyond the pharmacy and into supermarkets, restaurants, snack aisles, and some of the world's biggest companies. We will see how a quieter appetite changes ordinary receipts, how big food is fighting back, and why pharmaceutical giants are becoming the new center of gravity. And by the end, we will answer a much bigger question. When millions of people begin wanting less food, where does all that money go? To understand that question, we have to begin with something completely ordinary, a trip to the supermarket. The shelves are full, the packages are colorful, every product is competing for attention. The store looks exactly the same, but something inside the customer has changed. They are no longer as hungry. This is not simply a story about whether one medicine is good or bad. It is a story about behavior, money, and the quiet choices that can reshape entire industries. A person walks past the family-sized chips. They buy less soda. They order a smaller meal and leave food on the plate. One decision means almost nothing. But repeat that decision across millions of customers, week after week, and billions of dollars can begin moving away from businesses designed around frequent eating, larger portions, and constant temptation. The medicine is the trigger. Appetite is the disruption. The food economy is the real story. Before we follow the money, one distinction matters. Ozempic is often used as a general name in everyday conversation, but it is one part of a much wider market. Ozempic is approved for type 2 diabetes. Wegovy contains the same active ingredient, semaglutide, and is approved for chronic weight management. Mounjaro and Zepbound use tirzepatide. Different names, different approvals, but one broad business effect. Appetite can become quieter. GLP-1 medicines mimic signals involved in blood sugar, digestion, and appetite. For many users, fullness arrives sooner and hunger becomes less demanding. We do not need a medical lecture to understand the business consequence. A quieter appetite can mean a smaller grocery basket, fewer snacks, smaller restaurant portions, and less interest in the cravings that food companies have spent decades learning how to monetize. By November 2025, about 1 in 8 American adults said they were currently taking a GLP-1 medicine for weight loss, diabetes, or another condition. Not every user behaves in the same way, and not every household changes its spending. But at this scale, even a modest shift in average behavior becomes commercially important. What looks like one person's private health decision can become a national demand signal. To see whether that signal is real, we have to move beyond headlines and follow the receipts. Cornell researchers connected survey responses with transaction records from a panel of roughly 150,000 households. Within 6 months of starting treatment, grocery spending fell by 3% on average. Spending at fast food restaurants, coffee shops, and other limited service businesses fell by about 8%. On a single weekly receipt, a 3% change may look almost invisible. It might mean one fewer snack, one drink removed, or a slightly smaller package. But supermarkets and packaged food companies do not survive on one receipt. They survive on enormous volume. A tiny change, repeated across millions of baskets, can become a serious demand shock. The decline was even larger among higher-income households, where average grocery spending fell by more than 8%. These customers often have more money available for premium snacks, convenience products, restaurant visits, and impulse purchases. So the pressure is not only about fewer calories. It can also mean fewer high-margin extras, the purchases that often make an ordinary basket more profitable. Restaurants face the same quiet problem. They can still sell the first meal, but if customers visit less often, refuse add-ons, skip dessert, or decide that a standard portion feels too large, the economics begin to change. The industry has spent years increasing the average ticket. A medicine that reduces appetite can pull the customer in the opposite direction without ever competing with a restaurant directly. That is what makes this disruption unusual. For decades, Food industry growth came from creating more eating occasions, selling larger portions, and turning cravings into impulse purchases. GLP-1 medicines do not challenge one chocolate bar, one soft drink, or one restaurant chain. They can weaken the behavior connecting the entire system, the desire to keep consuming more. But big food is not standing still. This is where the story changes from disruption to adaptation. Companies exposed to smaller appetites are redesigning products, labels, portion sizes, and even the language they use to sell food. Their first response is not surrender. It is an attempt to turn a threat into a new market. The most vulnerable products are those purchased mainly through craving, convenience, or excess. Candy, chips, sugary drinks, oversized fast food meals, and indulgent add-ons, fresh produce, lean protein, and fiber-rich foods may be less exposed, or may even benefit. This does not mean every snack company will collapse. Price, culture, habit, and individual behavior still matter. But the direction of pressure is becoming easier to see. The same pattern is appearing outside the United States. Reuters reported that about 5% of UK adults were using GLP-1 drugs. Grocery volume slipped even while the value of spending increased. Fresh food performed strongly. And Greg said customers were asking for smaller portions and clearer information about protein and fiber. The appetite shift is beginning to influence what retailers place on the shelf. And notice how quickly the language changes: bigger pack, extra cheese, limited time, 2 for 1. Those phrases were built for indulgence and abundance. Now companies are reaching for a different vocabulary: high protein, more fiber, smaller portion, nutrient dense. The new shelf is not simply selling food. It is selling compatibility with a quieter appetite. Nestlé moved early with Vital Pursuit, a frozen meal brand aimed at GLP-1 users and other weight-conscious customers. The meals emphasize protein, fiber, essential nutrients, and portions designed for smaller appetites. The response is not to accept that customers will buy nothing. It is to create a new category of products for a different kind of demand. Then came the surprising detail. Nestlé said 77% of Vital Pursuit sales came from households where nobody was using a GLP-1 medicine. That suggests the cultural effect can spread beyond patients. A medicine can influence what millions of other shoppers consider healthy, modern, and worth buying. The drug changes one group directly, but the marketing language can change everyone else. Conagra took another approach by adding a GLP-1 friendly label to 26 Healthy Choice frozen meals. The label is powerful because it connects an ordinary supermarket product with a major medical trend. But consumers should understand that there is no official regulatory definition for the phrase. USDA allowed the label alongside protein and fiber statements, yet the term itself can still create a strong health halo. That halo deserves attention. A GLP-1 friendly meal may help shoppers find smaller, protein-rich options, but the label does not automatically make every product healthy. Some products may still contain high levels of sodium, saturated fat, or added sugar. The useful lesson is not to trust or reject every new label. It is to turn the package around and read the nutrition panel behind the promise. Hershey shows how uneven this change can be. Its North American confectionery volume fell 4%, while salty snack volume rose 5% and Icebreaker's retail sales grew 8%. The company calls the new opportunity functional snacking, products bought for a health, energy, freshness, or lifestyle purpose, not only for pleasure. The likely response is a movement of investment across the portfolio. Large food companies can shift money away from giant candy packs, sugary drinks, and oversized meals toward protein, fiber, smaller portions, and functional benefits. The strongest companies may be those willing to replace yesterday's successful products before changing consumer behavior replaces them. Now the center of gravity shifts again. While food companies are trying to protect demand, pharmaceutical companies are selling the force changing that demand. Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly are not merely competing in medicine. They are fighting for leadership in an obesity drug market that analysts expect could exceed $100 billion by 2030. The scale is already extraordinary. Novo Nordisk reported Ozempic sales of about 1 billion Danish kroner in 2025. Eli Lilly reported roughly $23 billion from Mounjaro and $13.5 billion from Zepbound. The currencies are different, so a direct comparison is not useful. But the larger message is unmistakable. This is already a massive commercial category. Mounjaro and Zepbound accounted for 56% of Eli Lilly's total revenue in 2025. That number represents enormous opportunity, but also concentration risk. These medicines are transforming the company. At the same time, competition, pricing, safety evidence, manufacturing capacity, and changes in demand now matter more than ever to its financial future. The battle is not limited to laboratories and clinical trials. It is also an advertising war. Media radar data reported by Reuters showed Novo Nordisk spent nearly $500 million advertising Ozempic and Wegovy in the United States during the first 9 months of 2025. That was more than twice Eli Lilly's spending on Mounjaro and Zepbound. The companies are competing not only for prescriptions, but for public attention. The next growth engine may be a pill. Injections can create psychological and practical barriers. A daily tablet can feel more familiar and easier to fit into ordinary life. If oral treatment makes it easier for more people to begin and continue, the pharmaceutical opportunity could expand. So could the pressure on supermarkets, snack companies, and restaurants. But demand is not the same as access. KFF reported average list prices of around $1,000 per month in 2025. 56% of users said the medicines were difficult to afford, and 27% of insured users said they had paid the full cost themselves. A product can change behavior only when people can obtain it, afford it, and keep using it. Persistence may be even more important than adoption. KFF found that cost and side effects were common reasons for stopping treatment. Cornell found that the reduction in food spending largely faded after households discontinued the medicine. For big food, the long-term threat depends not simply on how many people try these drugs, but how many can remain on them. High demand and limited access also create a shadow market. The FDA has warned about fraudulent compounded semaglutide and tirzepatide products, including labels that named pharmacies that did not exist. This documentary is not medical advice or a buying recommendation. The business lesson is that scarcity and high prices can create unsafe sellers alongside legitimate innovation. So what might the future supermarket look like? It may not contain less choice. It may reorganize choice around a different appetite, smaller packs, protein-rich meals, fresh food, nutrition support, and products designed to provide function rather than endless indulgence. The aisle may not shrink. It may be rebuilt around a customer who is harder to tempt. The likely winners include drug makers and brands built around protein, fiber, fresh food, and smaller portions. Supermarkets, restaurants, and packaged food giants can still adapt. The greatest exposure sits with businesses whose value depends almost entirely on impulse, sugar, oversized servings, or constant snacking. The value chain is not disappearing. It is being redrawn. There are 3 broad futures. Adoption could plateau because of high prices, side effects, and discontinuation. It could continue steadily, making high-protein products and portion control part of normal shopping, or pills, lower prices, and stronger competition could create mass access and a structural reset in food demand. The outcome depends on access, persistence, and competition. For ordinary consumers, 3 lessons matter. First, read behind the marketing label, because fashionable language is not a universal nutrition standard. Second, compare portions and ingredients rather than trusting the promise on the front of the package. Third, when judging any business trend, follow actual behavior, receipts, repeat purchases, product reformulation, and where companies move their money. Ozempic's greatest business impact may not be the money it makes for pharmaceutical companies. It may be the money consumers stop spending everywhere else, at the snack shelf, the drive-through, the coffee counter, and the restaurant table. That is the hidden transfer at the center of this story. When appetite changes, the food economy has to change with it. The winners will not simply be the companies selling medicine. They may also be the businesses that understand the new customer first. So here is the question for you. What would you buy less of if hunger became quieter? Share your answer in the comments. And subscribe as we continue to decode the forces reshaping everyday business.